Take
Hi
the floor.
everyone, it's Heath Thorpe. I am an Australian champion in gymnastics. I've been doing it for about 15 years now, and am currently based over in Belgium. I am in Stuttgart at the moment, about to be at the GTB Pro Cool Cup this weekend. And yeah, looking forward to hopefully qualifying to Paris through the Oceania Championships.
Yes, we will be fingers crossed for that because we definitely want to see you there. Speaking of which, would you like to speak on your journey in the gymnastics world and what it's been like in recent years specifically? And maybe
Mhm.
what as well it was like coming out in men's artistic gymnastics and what that was kind of like given that it's stigmatized as such a gay
Mhm.
sport.
Yeah, it has definitely been interesting. And I think like the last few years have been really heightened. I kind of like go back to 2018 as the point where I kind of came out publicly. I was already like organically out within my circles and I didn't really have a platform at the time. So it kind of just naturally transitioned over to like the public side of it. And I didn't really think much of it. But I think it was more in 2022 where I started to become a bit more vocal in my advocacy, started doing some ambassadorships and such, where it came a bit more of a prominent part of my career. And it was also coincided with the year that I submitted a leap to the FIG for consideration in men's gymnastics. And then that was rejected. And I think a lot of the consequential follow up from it kind of just like sparked some conversations around gender norms and queerness within gymnastics, specifically men's. And I guess provided that means to further discuss where queerness lies within men's gymnastics. So since then, it's kind of just been a massive part of who I am and what I do in my social media. Whether that was deliberate or not is to be argued, but at the same time, it's kind of provided me with many opportunities I didn't really expect. So it's been pretty cool. But in saying that, it's still a very underrepresented community within the sport. There are very few openly queer gymnasts, at least on the international level. It's really cool to see more coming out in NCAA. I think that's really good for the sport, but I think international environment is a little more hostile, to be honest. So I'm hoping that there's a bit more of a shift in the next few years where the youth coming through can feel more comfortable to, I guess, live visibly within the sport. And yeah, I'm hopeful it's a little bit better for the future generations because it was quite difficult growing up within the sport and coming to terms with my sexuality. You mentioned that it was basically an environment where it just didn't exist. So it was quite stigmatized, and you didn't want to be the gay athlete that kind of promoted the already stereotype. So it was a bit of a complicated process, but in the end, it worked itself out, and I'm glad I can be in the position I am.
Yeah. Hmm. I feel like you worded that like perfectly with like almost re-stigmatizing it. You don't want to be like that
Mm-hmm.
person who like re-stereotypes and it's like, yeah, I'm I'm the token gay of the gymnastics group and like
Yeah,
everyone just sees okay. But yeah.
yeah.
Um okay, that's super cool. You spoke to being known as or submitting a leap to the quota points and that being rejected. That kind of made you known. I mean, we saw it a couple days ago, even on our page, as a leap guy. How do you feel about being known as like the leap guy? Do you like it or like
Um,
not? What's your take?
yeah, yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, it's natural to my gymnastics, so it's not like it was something I deliberately did out of just spite or wanting to protest. So I think because it was very natural to who I am and my gymnastics, it didn't change anything of what I do. But I don't mind it. It is kind of a bit strange sometimes, like walking into an international gym and like everyone knowing me because of that, rather than necessarily like results or something. It's kind of like you walk into the gym and it's like, oh, there's a world champion, there's this. And then I find people like, oh, there's Heath. And it's like, I'm known because of the leaps. But again, like I don't think I would have the opportunities I have now with social media and my career if it wasn't for what I did with the leaps. So yeah, and I think it's actually positively influenced FIG. There's hopefully some changes coming next Credit Points with leaps and such. And I heard I was a point of reference in that discussion. So it's cool to know that I made a real impact on that level, on the international level.
I definitely that's I feel like something here in the US we've like talked about how you're I knew you not from the leaps but from your high bar
Mm.
first, but how that is going to work out in the new code very well for you. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask, how do you feel about the direction of the new code of points? It seems very much like they are taking it back to a more artistic route because of the uproar that was started in 2018.
Yeah. I It's funny, we were talking about this today in the Stuttgart training gym about the Coda
Really?
points changes. Yeah, the US guys were just like, man, next Coda points, like it's going to be your quad. Like, this is wild. It's kind of like when the Coda points came out, I got messages from all around the world, and it was like, this is like the Heath Thorpe high bar code. It's
Yes,
like they wrote
literally.
this with your routine in mind. And I'm like, my start value is like higher with 8 skills counting by like 0.5 than what it is now with 10 skills counting. Like, I just read it and I was like, did I write this? There's no way. So I was like gagged by it. I was like, wow, this is crazy, but in the best way possible. And even just like, I think, yeah, it's goes in hand now with the leaps, but I think I am really known for my high bar too. And it's interesting because all of it kind of comes back to like, I find myself being in touch with my femininity and my inspiration from women's gymnastics. And that's just the skills I naturally were more inclined to wanting to do. So it's cool that it's rewarded because I just did just do them because I enjoyed it, but it's brought
Mhm.
a whole uniqueness to men's gymnastics that is like recognized on the international level. And my mom kind of says it to me all the time, especially when I'm like down about my gymnastics. She's like, I don't think you will realize until you step away from the sport how much global impact you've had on it and like what you would have done leading into the next generations. So yeah, I don't want it to sound like too self-important that like the credit points was written for me, but I think there
No,
was
it,
at
it
least,
sounds we
yeah,
we all knew this, as Ken would say, sublime.
yeah,
It
exactly.
wasn't
So
so sublime though.
yeah, so I'm really excited for the next credit points. I'm gonna focus on specializing, especially high bar, and really try and capitalize on that momentum and that benefit I will get because I know there's going to be a lot of guys reworking their routines for the first year or two of the code, and
Mhm.
I don't have to learn a single skill. So yeah, I'm excited for 2025 at least.
That is a huge advantage when you say that
Yeah.
out loud. So, kind of going off that, who or what are some of your biggest inspirations in curating your gymnastics thus far and the skills that you've chosen to focus on? Because I feel like in men's, we see just pushing power to the limits and trying the most
Mm-hmm.
extreme version of everything that we possibly can. But
Mm-hmm.
with you, like you kind of said, it's a lot more fluid and a lot more just dynamic in its
Mm.
range.
Yeah, I mean, I was even looking back on videos 2019, 2020, and I wasn't like the same clean gymnast I am now. I didn't have the lines I have. I think it does coincide with me realizing and coming to more comfortability with my sexuality and my role within the sport and just like owning who I am and what I want to do. I think that's allowed me to fully just lean into what benefits my gymnastics. And as I already mentioned, a lot of that comes from women's gymnastics and that inspiration from that side. Like even when I'm looking back on like the 2008 Olympics, like my friend and I, Ruben Chitters, who's also a gymnast from Australia, we were just watching like 2008, 2012 WAG finals. And it was just wild to think about how much influence women had on us growing up. Like that was just what I watched. And of course, there's some great men's gymnasts like Fabian Hambushin on obviously on high bar was a big inspiration. And then some of the Brazilians on floor, Kyle Schufelt. There are a lot of references in MAG that I look to now, but I think for the most part, it was always like women influencing me when I was younger. So I think all of it's really attributed to WAG. And then later on, also having friends in ballet and dance and trying to just like have this experience of not necessarily like artistry, but like I describe it as like bliss. And one of my Belgian coaches here, he says when he watches my high bar, it's like watching someone play a piano. Like it all connects and it's fluid. It's just
That's such a good way to put it.
yeah. And I think when I realized that, I was like, yeah, it's this movement and this like joy from I don't know, like having all these strings attached and making the gymnastics look as fluid as possible. So yeah.
Holding your breath, and then when it's hit,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like perfect
Even like
connections on beam.
watching like in the background videos now when I go to like training halls and stuff, it's like it's just really cool to see people like turn around and watch and it's like their reactions from like seeing the connections and everything here. It's really interesting seeing them interact with one another.
Mhm.
And it's really affirming because it's what I want people to feel when watching my gymnastics.
Have you ever like trained women's gymnastics like just for fun, like on the side?
I mean, yeah, I like play around with it. It's mostly just being like beam on the floor line
Yeah.
because I don't want to like break my ankle or injure myself. Yeah, there's some things in the second half of the year that might allow me to be doing a bit more women's gymnastics, especially when I take a bit of a break from the sport leading into next quad. I think I can play around with it a bit more. We're choreographing a floor routine actually at the moment for WAG. So yeah,
Ooh.
that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
I did gymnastics for 12 years with USAG, and towards the end I kind of just started like playing around with beam. Once I kind of like what you said, like started becoming very comfortable with my sexuality, and I just started being I had so many girlfriends in the sport that I just was always over on the girl events, and I just happened to like start throwing stuff on beam. And
Yeah.
like not consequently, but as a result, my execution like on every single event got
Oh,
so much better specifically because of like training beam. And I want to
mhm.
like ask if like you think that that has any correlation because I feel like beam it has to be
Yeah.
perfect or you're not on the beam
For sure. I think yes, beam, but I think just like when I started
all
training
the
the leaps,
events.
like yeah, true. It's like when I first started like properly training the leaps and getting references from people in ballet and WAG, it was just like
Mhm.
the amount of detail that would go into making the leap look nice. It's like the chin up, it's the angle you have your hand at, it's the way you lift off the floor. Like it just makes you think that about all your gymnastics. And it's kind of like when I start doing artistry in my floor routine, it's like you want to finish on a nail and you need to have that chin up final. And it's the same in like now the Jaeger on high bar, I put my arms behind because it gives like a moment of like a gasp for people. So it's
Exactly.
those little touches that from training women's skills have helped me make my men's skills, I guess, better.
You make them look like effortless or flawless, like that extra just
Mhm.
moment of like drama. Like when people say
Mm,
Simone does gymnastics as it should look, like that's like that added drama. I mean, no one's
yep.
Simone, so I can't compare anyone to that, but like
No.
I don't even try.
It's like watching
Like
her like choose Savina on floor. It like hangs in the air for that second, and you're just like,
that.
and it's just yeah, it's
Exactly.
amazing.
So you started a podcast. What kind of
Yeah.
inspired you to start that? And yeah, I'll get into some of the guests that I have mentioned here in a sec. But yeah,
Mhm.
what really inspired you to start that and integrate media in the conversation about gymnastics and
Yeah.
representing that?
It's funny. I just like started. I'm about to finish my recent episode with Jackson Harrison, who's an amazing non-binary gymnast from Arizona State University.
Love
Yeah.
them. I went to
It
camp
was a
with them at Illinois, I think 2017. And then
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the gymnastics was beautiful, but I actually took a little bit of a break from it. Just like I think I had a few like mental health things going on and just wanted to take a step back because I wanted it to be not like a task. So I'm excited to get back into it now. But I started it just because it was after the World Championships, really, when I went as a journalist and kind of just like recognized the value I can bring to conversations around gymnastics, but like the intersectionality of gymnastics and queerness and like my life and my brand. And I think I have so many gymnasts asking me for advice with media and social media now. I'm making it a career. And there's just a lot of people that I think look up to me in different ways, which is something I'm really grateful for. So I just realized there was more people needed to hear from me. And like, you can't really do that in an Instagram post. So I was like, here's going to be a medium for people to get to know me a little bit better and to kind of facilitate some discussions I wouldn't just have on an Instagram story. So it was about more going in depth. It was also about kind of trying to highlight some more positive queer stories. It was originally going to be a queer only podcast,
Mhm.
but I think it was important for me to have allies on there as well and people that are just important to my life, regardless if they're queer or not.
So you've had guests like Morgan Hurd, you just spoke about
Yeah.
Jackson Harrison. Are there any more exciting guests that you have planned? Or
Yes.
just what was the experience with them, with both of them like?
Yeah. I mean, like Morgan's one of my best friends. We've
She's
known
so
each other,
cute. I love her.
yeah, for like 5 years, and it's like kind of like it was a really nice catch up because just with the reality of life, we just don't get to talk as much as we want to. So it was just like good old times, and it was a
Yeah,
really
you
fab
could really see
discussion.
that. I felt
Yeah,
like a FaceTime call.
yeah, it was actually like 3 hours long, and I had to edit it down. It
Oh my
was
God, I can't even
yeah,
imagine how long that took to edit.
it
Oh
was a
my
long
God.
time. But that was like really joyful, and that was kind of like the experience I wanted people to
You.
USAG and the Olympic
Yes.
trials, because a lot of people just haven't heard about that. So that was good. And then similar to Jackson Harrison, just like allowing that visibility for people listening to learn and see and kind of react and go and think. I think that's what I want people to do. So they've been great. I also have the trio of Powerpuff Girls from
Dude, yeah, period.
Minnesota and edit it,
And the
but
upcoming
it's
just
just a fun side project that I just do. Dream collaborations. Um, Gymnastics wise, I think it would just be like really cool to have someone like Simone on there. I think she has so much to say.
seeing Simone's video specifically versus her interviews and all the press from prior years was
Yeah.
like a jarring, drastic difference in such a good way. It
Mhm.
seemed like she felt so comfortable just like being asked a question by you specifically versus any of the other people standing there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like that was so visible through the like screen and so, like you could feel that. And I just like, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, thank
that would
you.
be amazing.
Yeah. So I'd love to kind of like build on that. So if I think I'd want it to be in person though. So if we ever get the chance to link up in person, that'd be a really good one. But yeah, I'm glad she felt comfortable. I mean, a lot of that's attributed to also all the work she's done on herself in the last
Oh,
year and such. So yeah, but I'm glad she did feel comfortable. It was like nice beforehand, like the USAG comms person would come up to me and be like, "Hey, Simone's team has requested that you get the last question of like worlds," and I was like, "That's sweet." So
that
I'm
is
glad I
super.
could be a familiar face in the mass crowd of media people for her.
I mean, even among just everyone you spoke to,
Yeah.
it still seemed like they just felt more comfortable. They didn't seem threatened or as if you were a foreigner to them. Everyone just felt very comfortable speaking to you and giving you like their honest, like, this is the rundown,
Mm.
or like, okay, this is what's happening. And
Yeah,
they
it
were
was really nice, like seeing people's like face light up when they saw me in the mix zone. And I just kind of like what I like is
so last year you were left off the Australian world team. How has that changed the trajectory of your career? And
yeah, I don't know. I think it's changed quite a lot. And I think it's also something I haven't fully realized and sat with. It was a very big process and it weighed a lot on me. And I still am feeling, I guess, the leftovers of it. Like, even just kind of this week, heading back into a national team environment for the first time since, that appeal and all those things. It's just like, it does bring a lot of anxiety to me. And I've had to do a lot of work on overcoming that and trying to stay comfortable to who I am and, know that I did it with the right intentions and such. So it's added a lot of layers, but I guess at the same time, it's built a lot of resilience for myself and a lot more confidence in my strength as an athlete and as a person. And then at the same time, it also did provide that journalist media experience at Worlds, which wasn't a plan. It was kind of just like a last minute thing. And I
Mhm.
think that's going to have a lot of good opportunities open for me moving forward. I would love to be involved in the journalist space in gymnastics. I think there's a lot of perspectives I can bring that others can't. So,
I
yeah,
agree.
I would love to do it, but I guess first and foremost, my goals is to be competing at those competitions.
Yes.
But yeah, it kind of like turned my life a bit of upside down. Like I live in Belgium now. I relocated after that. Mhm.
What is your opinion on the collegiate gymnastics program in the US and how it feeds into our specific country's worlds and Olympic teams and
Mm.
like, how that's viewed internationally, specifically having like trained with people who did leave the country and then come back to do that?
Yeah, it is interesting. I actually was in discussions with a few colleges a few years back about doing an NCAA.
That would have been
And
iconic. Oh my
it would have
God.
been iconic. I am glad I didn't take the opportunities up because it would have happened in 2020 and like I would have had a COVID
Oh
year.
God.
And so I'm glad in hindsight I didn't take it. And it was also just because I was already 2 years into my degree and I'd moved for gymnastics already. So it just wasn't what I wanted at that stage of my life. But in saying that, I think the program is very cool. And I think it's very foundational to the depth that you guys have in America, in the US, because when I think about, for example, within Australia, it's like you train and you compete to be an elite. And it's like if you're not one of those 5 people making that national team or that world championships team, it kind of just like leaves you with a bit of question of why am I doing it? Like what else am I pushing and going in the gym every day and sacrificing finances and jobs and all these things if I'm not making this team? I think what NCAA is, it provides a career pathway because it also aligns with your education. And I think it provides a purpose beyond an Olympic team, beyond an international experience, because you have something to work towards. You have goals every week and you have a team around you. And I think you're valued as an athlete, even if you're not at that Olympic level. So I think for the majority of people, it's really important because if it wasn't for NCAA, they probably would have had to quit gymnastics to focus on their college and focus on working. And, what the scholarships provide is free tuition. It sets them up for a better life in terms of, not having to worry about paying for your uni. And it also gives you a college degree by the end of it. So I think it's really foundational to the current success we see in the US mag. Like they got a bronze medal with pretty much, I'd have to go through it, but all NCAA guys or
That
previously
was all
NCAA
the
guys.
one current, everyone on there was a current collegiate athlete, and the only one who wasn't was former as well.
Exactly. So I think that in itself is proof that the program works and it produces competitive international gymnastics. So I think you only have to look at where men's USA gymnastics is at the moment and attribute it to the college program. So I think it's really important, and it's very frustrating to see college cuts and funding cuts to programs. But I think it like provides an alternative purpose, or at least a coinciding purpose for athletes aspiring to an international level. It's like when I have a bad training, it feels like the end of the world because that's my entire focus, that I'm trying to get to the Olympics or perform really well at this international comp. I think if I had an alternative, or like as I said, coexisting experience with college or something similar, it would make me, I think it would just have a lot less.
But after being left off the world's team, you said it was pretty like it wasn't planned or anything for you to do media at Worlds. Kind of, how did that just come about and arise for you? And what was that like?
Mm. I kind of got thinking about it because I was going over for the Challenge Cups anyway, which were in Europe a few weeks before, and I was lining up doing Bundesliga, the German Pro League over
Mhm.
here, just because I kind of needed a distraction. I was like, I need to do something, like get me out.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I saw like FIG put up like, hey, you have this many days left to apply for your like press pass. And I was like, oh, I wonder if like my platform is enough to be considered like a journalist like for gymnastics. So I reached out to Patricia from Gymnastics Now, and I was just like, hey, do you know if this could work? And she was like, I don't necessarily know if it would, but you could apply through us if you want. And it kind of
Mhm.
was just like, we would love to have you on board, and we think we could do a lot with you, and it could be really good for both of us. And I was like, yeah, screw it, let's do it. And
Yeah.
straight away, she was like, I want you to be like in the interview. I want you to be the one doing it. And I was like, yeah,
Such
I'd
an
love
exciting.
that. So we did it, and it was organized within like 2 weeks. And yeah.
Fun. That's interwoven and close knit the gymnastics community is, even on the international scale, just going to
Mm,
competitions, training, and seeing people just people know each other and just like say hi, regardless of like whether you want to win or not. It's just
mhm.
always such a nice space. And I wanted to get your take
Yeah.
and just like, yeah, your experience with that.
Yeah, I think it's just like such a fab and really wholesome experience. I always my non-gymnastics friends always find it quite bizarre that I'll be like, oh, I want to travel to this country, and they'll kind of be like, oh, what about accommodation? What do you need? Like, is that going to cost you? And I'll be like, no, I'll just message this gymnast and I'll stay at their house. And like, I don't even need to be that close with them, but it's just
Yeah.
like this unspoken rule that like if an international gymnast is visiting your city, they stay with you and they get to train with you. And
That's so
it's just
cool.
it's really cool. I think it's really beautiful. And I think we just have so much respect for one another because we know how hard we work and how many adversities we have to overcome to be at that level. It's just like we want the best for one another. So I think that's a really cool thing. It also comes back to it being an individual sport with no defense and no reason to not like your competitors. So it is just like the utmost appreciation for each other. And yeah, I just really love it. I also love that I like really merge between the mag and wag spaces too. I'm always like jumping between, like even today at training, I'm like over at beam talking to the girls, and then I run back over to like high bar, and it's just like,
You're able to, can you speak to your plans for training upgrades and goals for this year with it being an Olympic year and overall just hopes with your gymnastics career in general?
yeah, I think this year, like DTB is this weekend, and it's a little bit of a pickle because it is an official selection for the Oceania team. It's one of the competitions they can use in the last 12 months. So it's not still clear on how they use it, but it kind of puts me in the position where there's a few upgrades I want to try, but I also have to be smart with positioning myself best for selection. So, like for example, there's triple back on high bar, which I would love to compete, and I think it's kind of
Mhm.
like if I make finals, I will do it here, rather than in qualifications. And then P bars, I've kind of like worked really hard on to get a lot cleaner. The aim is like a mid 13.5, and it was sitting at like a 12.6 last year. And then just like those two apparatus were kind of the big ones. And then the rest is just being like clean, consistent gymnastics. I'm relying on what I'm known for, being my execution.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, there's a few things here and there on pommel we're going to play with, but this weekend starts safe, and then we'll build up until end of May. I also am competing at Luxembourg Open, which is like an FIG all around competition next month. So there'll be another opportunity to push a bit more. But this year it's kind of just like getting through and giving myself the best chance to win the Oceania spot. There's like, for example, like in my head, Jesse Moore, it's like, I don't want to put the pressure on him, but I think it's like if he's healthy, it's almost his spot because he is so good. And it's
Mhm.
like I need to position myself to be as consistent and kind of take the opportunity if him or anyone else is to have like an off day. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like where I'm at with my gymnastics, where being smart. And then looking beyond that, like I definitely want to be pushing to LA 2028. And as I said earlier,
Speaking to your joy of covering in journalism at Worlds, do you kind of want to pursue that maybe after, or what are your plans?
I think it's really just dependent on how feasible it is financially for me. If I'm still making money and hopefully better money from social media and brand deals and sponsorships, and I can comfortably save and live, then, I'd love to continue it as long as I can. But I also don't want to get to a position where I'm in my 30s and don't really have savings and, I don't have any real world experience and kind of then put myself in the not best position for the rest of my life. So it's kind of like 2028. We'll see where I get to. Hopefully by then, my profile will continue to grow and I can capitalize on my social media. But in regards to media and journalism roles, I think it'd be really cool. I kind of like hopefully see myself in this position where I can just like work in a lot of different areas. Like, I guess, like kind of utilizing my role as like a public figure and potentially doing like journalism here, maybe commentating like TV here in Australia, this and this.
Oh, you'd be so fun as a commentator of the sport. I would
Yeah, I
love
think that'd be
that.
really cool. Um, I think there's just like a lot I can do and a lot of untapped potential that I haven't even thought about. I like obviously have a PR and advertising degree, so I could go work in that. I'm on like some boards at the moment for diversity and inclusion within sport policies, so I could see myself consulting in those spaces. I don't really want.
What are some hobbies, things you get into on the side other than social media and gymnastics?
Yeah, I
I
mean
know
it's
there's
not.
not a lot of time, but
Yeah, it depends where I'm in the world. If I'm back at home, it's kind of just like downtime with friends and family. My cat, very like stereotypical Australian, go to the beach, maybe a surf, and just like, I don't know, enjoy the company I'm with. I really gotten into the ballroom community within Belgium and Europe. So I've been walking a
that
few
must be
balls
fun.
and voguing and just kind of like I don't know, expressing my queerness and the joy within that, and just like really learning from a really rich and beautiful culture, and kind of
Do
like,
you feel like you have any added pressure from social media, having a podcast, knowing just the sheer amount of people you do within the gymnastics community? And when you go to a competition, does that add any anxiety or pressure to you in a sense?
yeah, it does. And like, I mean, it kind of gives as much pressure as you give weight to. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes I can just be like, it's social media, it's fake, and I'm never going to have to deal with 99.9% of the people I'm interacting with, right? So I'm kind of
Mhm.
like, it doesn't matter. But then sometimes on the other hand, I'm like, oh, there's hundreds of thousands of people like following my journey. So it can be a lot. And even like leading into DTB, it's like a lot of that intrinsic pressure is then fueled by wanting to show the world something and prove something and be like, especially with the whole world's ordeal, like wanting
Mhm.
to step out and be like 100 times better, even
Yeah.
knowing that's not how gymnastics and the process works and how time works.
Mhm.
So it does add a lot of pressure, especially just when you're not 100% confident in yourself. It's like you step into podium training and there's cameras or there's media or there's people like talking about you or looking at you. As I said, even like today, it was just like everyone in the gym stopped and turned to watch my high bar. And even like the Chinese mad coaches were like filming my high bar. So it
That's
does add
endless. I would have.
it was
Can I ask you who you want to see on the US WAG 2024 Olympic team?
oh okay. You can. I mean, okay, Shilese and Simone are like the two locks for me. I see them both doing all around, and I'm like, fab, okay. Then I obviously have a really soft spot for Suni. We've been friends for quite a long
Love
time.
her.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, her bars is fab. And she just has like this superstar quality to her in her
Agree.
gymnastics. Like she's just one of my all-time favorite gymnasts. So
Mhm.
I'd love to see her in potentially like an uneven bars, balance beam specialist capacity. And then I think that opens the door for a floor and vault athlete. I would love to see Jocelyn on the team. I think she was really in form at Worlds last year, and it sucked that she had that injury. And she's just actually such a sweetheart. So
Is
I would
she?
just love
I
to,
love that.
yeah, I would just like love to see her realize her dreams. So that's like I would love her there. And I guess it leaves like one spot open for kind of whoever. I have a, I really love Leanne Wong. I would love to see Gabby Douglas come back nice and strong. I would love to see Jordan Childs do well. Caitlin DiCello is doing amazing. Like, there's
True.
too many people to choose like five, but I think otherwise, Jocelyn, Suni, Charlize, and Simone are the four core that I would love to see. And that's my USA gymnastics opinion.
Period.